Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with JR. Baby, it is cold outside. Yes, it is cold outside. It is cold outside across the country. We have gotten snow, we have gotten sleet, we have gotten ice. I am just hoping that everybody is someplace safe and that everybody is someplace warm. Check on your neighbors, and if you don't necessarily have to go out, this is a public service announcement. Stay inside your warm house. Today's theme is going to be, or today's discussion is going to be with an author of a book, Minister Helen Ledbetter, Domestic Violence and the Church. But before I get into that, I would like to welcome everybody to 2026. And the theme for Conversations with JR this year is going to be Your Voice Matters, Your Healing is Valid. Conversation with JR is dedicated to creating a safe space for men and women for healing through open conversation by engaging and guess what? Topics that nobody is talking about. We talk about this and we talk about that, but are we really talking about the topics that really matter? Now, I'm going to put a disclaimer. This topic involves the church, the body of Christ. This discussion is not an attack on the church or its leadership or its organization, anybody's faith. That's not what we're here to do. Both speakers today, both people today, we are heavily involved in different religious organizations. That's not it. This is to bring awareness about a topic that I believe, after I read the book, that needs to be talked about and that the church is ignoring. And it's also a call to action. So today's guest, Minister Helen Ledbetter, author of Domestic Violence and the Church. Now, before we go into the discussion again, I'd like to say to my listeners, if you feel that you're being triggered by anything that we are sharing today, because this can be a triggering topic: domestic violence, mental health. It could be a triggering conversation. I ask you to monitor your feelings, monitor your thoughts, reach out and get some help, or even just stop listening, and we thank you for your support. Now, I have here today Minister Ledbetter again, who had the courage to write this book. So, without further ado, welcome, Minister Ledbetter. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, JR. So happy to be here. Thank you for this invitation.
Oh, you're very very welcome. And I have to let the audience know that where you live at, you got what, 46 inches of snow? You told me.
Yes, we got about 4 to 6 inches between snow, ice, sleet, and all those other good things. So yeah, it's about 4 to 6 inches.
But that's what you said, in between all those other good things. So I'm just glad that you're here, you're safe, and you're warm. My question to you is that when I read this book and I got my hands on this book, I felt that it was really really a bold move of you writing this book. There's so many books on domestic violence, but domestic violence in the church. And my question to you is, what really gave you the courage to write this book and put the church at the center of this?
Well, thank you for that question. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share and to shed light onto this sensitive but necessary topic about domestic violence and the church. And what brought me to this actually is a little journey that actually made me decide to focus on the church first as a means of bringing about awareness because a former, I'll say a victor, not a victim, of domestic violence. I am no longer a victim. Was in the church, and I realized my abuser was in the church, had been in the church all his life, and I found myself sitting there, and him sitting over there, and over time, I it became apparent to me that they had to have known something was going on. I never brought it up. I never mentioned it. I never acknowledged it that I was having those issues because people will look at you different. They may judge you, and it's embarrassing. It's kind of humiliating for you to be sitting in a church and you accusing your spouse who's sitting across the pew from you of being abused. And when I realized that I had left that church and went to other churches, the same thing wasn't happening to me because I thankfully I was able to get out of my situation. But I also realized in my endeavors and going around from church to church, calling and asking and sending out information about it, that it was nothing existing in the church. So I found out you have people sitting next to you in the pews, singing in the choir, preaching in the pulpit, greeting you at the door, who may be going through domestic
Mm-hmm.
violence, suffering in silence, hurting, and no voice. And that's what I felt as a domestic abused person. I feel like I had no voice. My voice was taken because I was living in fear and intimidation, control, and manipulation. So it's a lived experience to be sitting in the church and still feel helpless and hopeless.
What made you? I'm listening to what you said in the beginning. What made you feel when you're looking around the congregation? What made you feel or gave you the idea that somebody in here knows what's going on?
Because of my conversations with the pastor at the time, I was in Colorado. Actually, I was living in Colorado Springs, and conversations with the pastor and even some of the other congregants, and the fact that I heard one of the other parishioners that they were going through the same thing, but was it ever addressed? That's when I knew it was just being ignored. People would know about it, they may hear your story, but it was never brought out. There was never a platform distinguished to bring that to the forefront of the congregation. That if you're going through this kind of a domestic violence situation or anything similar, then there's places you can go. We can provide you with help, resources, outreach type of in ministries to help you through the situation because there was nothing going on in the church and it wasn't mentioned even after it was being, I guess you say, testified about within the church. So they didn't bring about awareness. They didn't offer any help. So I knew then they wasn't going to help me. I had to get my own individual help and counseling because the church wasn't there. It's supposed to be a place of hope and a place of help and a place of refuge. And we consider the church as a hospital where you can come to get help, to get healing. And it's not just for our spiritual being, it's for our natural being too, because we are a threefold being. We are mind, soul, and body. So God wants to heal the complete whole of us, not just our spiritual walk with Him. And when I realized that I wasn't going to get any help from the church, that I was on my own and to seek out my own ways and means of coping and dealing with it and trying to live through it and get out of it, that I knew that the church wasn't going to be there. And I've since been vindicated in this sense that I've reached out to churches. I've talked to a few people about it to see if they offered it. And maybe out of the many churches that I've called, talked to, emailed information to, I might have gotten two or three maybe that said that they had something set up in their churches that would address the issue. And all I want to do is to get into churches and just say, listen, we can do an awareness platform. I have a proposal. You can be as big as you want or as little as you want. Create something to at least let people know, hey, we have things available to you. We can help you, and just put it out there. It has to be a confidential platform. It has to be somewhere safe, somewhere they feel like they can trust to divulge this private and sensitive information because domestic abuse comes on every level. Some people's lives are at stake. They are threatened if they leave, and there are homicides associated with domestic violence. And even after the victim leaves, sometimes they're hunted down and killed for that. So that's how I got to the point to where domestic violence in the church, it has to start at the church and then go out into the community, because the people that are in the community come into the church. So if it's happening in the community, why would you not think it's happening in the church? So we all kind of all this happy go lucky, la da da, because I'm in the church, everything is well. Everybody's in the church is not saved. They're sitting there, but everybody's not saved. So it needs to be addressed and at least give people options on what they can do, how they could get help. And if you're sitting there suffering, afraid, terrified, feeling helpless, hopeless, and scared to say anything, if I had somewhere to go that I could feel comfortable with, safe with, and somewhere that I could trust, then I would be more likely to speak up and speak out. That's the start right there. When you get you some support, that's the beginning of healing for your journey. And everyone has a different journey. Someone has to be more strategic in their leaving. And some people just need encouragement in their confidence, their self esteem, to value themselves better, to see higher of themselves, to think higher of themselves. And some people just need that, because victims actually love their abusers. They don't like the abuse, and they don't want to leave, but they don't want the abuse. So that keeps them perpetually staying, because they're living in hope, hoping that he'll change, hoping I can do something better, something different to make his whole situation change. And it's not until you
Mm.
perhaps get out that you realize it's not about you at all.
Wow. So let me ask you a question. How did you feel? So here you are sitting up in church, sitting next to your abuser. You're already feeling neglected, abused, battered, hopeless, detached, like no one loves you. How did you feel when your church? I need to understand that. How did you feel like when you see, okay, I am not getting any help from the people who proclaim to walk like Christ, to be like Christ, to have compassion, to have love, to have unconditional forgiveness. How did you feel when when you had to say, okay, they're not going to help me. This sanctuary, this place of hope is not going to help me. So I have to go outside and get that help. How did that make you feel?
It makes you feel detached. It kind of decreases your faith in that particular, just that particular church, that you thought they should be able to one to help you. They should be able the one to reach out and to offer some kind of assistance. Because like I say, it's nothing people go in there and just raise their hands about it and just admit out loud. And because it's humiliating, it's embarrassing to be sitting up in the church and going through those type of things, because you think the church is supposed to help you, especially when you know, if you have some idea. And even when I was in Colorado, the 4 years I spent there, it was never mentioned across the pulpit. It was never taught in
Mm.
any ladies or women's class or any of those things. So it's devastating to feel like, because I would sit there and just be distressed and depressed and sad. And
Mm.
you think anybody came up to me and say, "Hey, Helen, you okay? What's the matter? Can I help you?"
Mm.
Nobody. And it was apparent. I could get up, come in the church, sit there, never say anything, a lump in my throat, sit there through the whole service, get up and walk out, and nobody would say anything. And I knew from
Why did you
within,
keep going?
because, well, it wasn't long after all of that transpired, because at that time, my husband at the time, he had left. He had PCS to a different location, and even then, nobody said anything. So I started going to a different church, but I realized the same thing. It was the same thing everywhere, because nobody
Mm.
cares enough. I don't think nobody reaches out to find out, well, how you doing? Because I always say, you don't ever know if people coming in there, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know if you're reaching out
Right.
could save their life. Even just for that day, depression is real, and it could send you into a tailspin that you don't really know how to come out of. And I also found out that being as an abused person, in and out of the same situation for over 30 years. And I know that's mind boggling. It boggles my mind even to this day. But I also realize that it has to do with the mental illness because you are
Mm-hmm.
controlled and manipulated in the whole process. And your abuser will kind enough, they do just enough to keep you in hope, keeping you thinking it's going to get better. They make you all these empty promises. And because you are conditioned to that environment, you believe it. Because why? You want to, because you want things to change. And again, like I said, abusers abuse people. They do love their abusers. And so that keeps them trapped into that cycle over and over again because they're being controlled and manipulated.
Let's get into a little bit of the book here. In chapter 3, you talk about the challenges of speaking up, and you talk about that leaders, are, like people in the house of worship could blame, the victim for a lack of faith or a lack of prayer life when domestic violence or mental health or depression or anything like this is mentioned. Um, why do you think the challenge about speaking up and also making the victim feel shame about their faith?
I believe it's because many church leaders are not aware of the impact domestic violence has. They misconstrue the scriptures to think a whole lot of things that aren't true. And like you say, victim blaming, not understanding the full dynamics and the depth that um, victims go through in domestic violence situations. It's just lack of training, a lack of understanding, and sometimes they just don't want to be involved. Sometimes they may not have the resources,
But
but
right. But even though, okay, even though I understand that they, because you addressed that in the book, the lack of training, lack of knowledge. But come on, listen, we're all human beings, right? So we may not have the answers, but as leaders, if I come to you and as leaders, and I'm a member of your congregation, and I'm bringing this problem to you, and I'm bringing this situation to you, don't you think there's a sense of responsibility and obligation to really get involved in this, bring this person to the side instead of brushing it off?
you would think there would be a sense of obligation. But again, I think it's a broad topic with a lot of moving parts, and it takes a dedication to it to bring all those parts together to set up something, anything that would respond to the problem. And I don't think pastors really know the full dynamics of domestic violence. They don't want to be involved in it. They just feel like you just should go somewhere else and get your issues resolved elsewhere. And again, like I say, they
Wow.
teach the scriptures out of context. That further silences the victims because now you saying it's my fault. Now you saying I should know who I'm
But
dealing with.
everybody, right, but everybody knows that domestic violence, whether in church or out of church, everybody knows that domestic violence is a life and death situation.
I don't believe everybody does know that.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't think everybody. I don't think everybody is aware enough because if you don't deal with it, if you have not looked into it, you have not studied it, or you don't know anyone involved in it, you don't really know how deep it can go, how much involved it can be. And I don't think people want to be involved. They don't want to be involved in nobody's personal life and telling them what to do. And when you got deacons and preachers, I mean, men and women are abused, and they're sitting up in the church, you're not likely to rebuke them up there.
Okay, but aren't you supposed to be involved in every facet of my life because I am a part of this house of worship and every facet of my life is supposed to be a concern?
Supposed to be, that's the operative word, supposed to be. but everybody does not want to go down that rabbit hole. Everybody doesn't want to because that's a huge undertaking. I admit it is a lot to be able to set up just a small platform to address it. And then once you address it, because pastors are normally equipped for pastoral care, they're not normally equipped for counseling. And if you have a smaller church, then there's not a lot of times a counseling person in that church that could even counsel you through it. So it opens up a whole lot of things that they have to deal with. They have to educate themselves on it, how rampant it is, how deep it goes, all the different types. It's a lot to divulge into, and I don't think pastors are aware enough or care enough or know enough or have even been informed enough to want to open up that can.
Wow. Going back to your book, chapter 8, you talk about this was very, like when I read this chapter, you talk about the language that is used against the victim. And it's really I'm pointing to the chapter right now. You talk about the language that is used against the victim, and you said that worship culture, sensitive language, validates and protects harmful language, silence, and shames. Church leaders should avoid questions that imply blame. Why didn't you leave? Like you said, you should have known who you was getting involved in. The language that you put in here, I really, why do you think that, okay, now I'm in this situation, I'm asking for help, but you're using this language against me to harm me and to shame me?
Yes, and that is a prime example of why that would lead me to recoil. I no longer trust you. So therefore, I'm never going to come to you again. So for the next church I go to, then why would I bring that up again? Because now you've silenced me. Now you have taken away my voice because you're blaming me. And if I think you'll do it, then I just automatically assume then probably somebody else will too. So why would I put myself out there? Because a lot of times they do blame, well, why don't you just leave? Not knowing the totality of the problem. Because it's not just as simple as just
Mm,
leaving, because there are a lot of dynamics, I say, involved. People don't leave for various reasons. Mental health is a major factor in that, but they're also, you don't have the financial stability, you don't have the support because you've been alienated from your family and your friends, and you've been threatened, you're afraid for your life, maybe for your children's life, and they've told you that if you leave that I'm going to kill you, I'm going to hunt you down, and they feel they get stalked and all these things. And that is a huge reason why many people stay. They don't have the financial means and they're in fear, and reaching out can be detrimental to their health. So it's a strategic way in order to leave if you want to leave. But you got to get to that point first. And a lot of churches don't understand it. They will convince you to stay. And well, what did you do? Why? What part of did you play in the situation? Why did you make it so angry? And then when you get those kind of questions, you're like, wow, but then again, at the same time, depending on what stage you are in the abuse, you start believing those things. You fall for the same lies they're telling you that your abuser told you. So if you hear from him and then you hear
mm.
from someone in the church, that almost validates that maybe it is my fault. Maybe it is something I'm doing. So you try to go soul searching and change your whole self to please somebody in
Wow.
hope that that will be a solution to the problem, but it isn't.
Yeah, because you're told that, like you said, to add to that, you're right. You're told that, the husband is the head, he's the ruler over you, you must submit yourself, like all those things that you are told again and again and again. So now you're being victimized over and over again because now you're challenging my faith. You're
Mm-hmm.
using the Bible scriptures against me, and it's like you're supporting the man.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So
And
it so
again, like you said, the many reasons for people, for women not leaving, when, like you said, when people don't understand and they don't get a deep understanding of financial reasons, children reasons, life is at stake, I'll threaten your family. It's just so, they, and like you said, and they will terrorize you, hunt you down, even after you leave. So there's a whole, a gamut of things that are involved in chapter 9. Um, Very important chapter. The entire book is important, but in chapter 9, you talk about the impact of domestic violence on children. Can you speak a little more about the mental and emotional impact that this has on children?
Yes, absolutely. We are a product of our environment. We are environmentally conditioned as we grow up. So what we see, we tend to mimic, even if we are determined not to. And if we grow up in an abusive home and that's all we see, then that leads to question that must be what happens. That must be the norm. That must be how things are done everywhere because that's all you see. People teach you by example. Not necessarily say what you they'll do what you say, but they'll do what they see. So that is why it's important for parents to act out and live out what it is they are always preaching. And the psychological effects, I myself, I had to apologize and ask my children to forgive me for letting them, keeping them in that situation. Because you think, well, the father, they need their father, they need their both parents in the home, not realizing the damage you're doing to them psychologically. So they grow up sometimes angry. They don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
have a healthy relationship because they have never seen one.
Wow.
And they
Yes.
go through things in their adult lives that they saw in their childhood. So that's detrimental to their well being at the time. So it does take counseling, it takes people getting the help that they need at an early, as a young adult, and not just blowing it over or pushing it by the wayside and thinking that you're okay. When you get in a relationship and things start coming up and you respond in a certain way or you react in a certain way, that's all because that's what you've seen. And when you say, well, I'm not going to do this, and I'm not, and you get a little bit defensive, you get a little bit violent, and you're going through PTSD. You're responding to someone who means you no harm, but because you on guard because of what you've seen, then you're going to react negatively. And that takes an understanding person to realize that. But it takes the adult child the fortitude and the insightfulness to realize, wow, this is not healthy. This is not what I want. This is what I saw and heard when I was growing up. So I don't want to deal with this. But they have to get the counseling and the help to know how to turn those things around, um, and not for it to be a downfall in their lives.
Right. Yeah, this is like the chapter on the children. It's very, very important that we understand the mental and emotional and the physical, harm that this does to children. But another chapter that I was very much engaged in is chapter 11, when you talked about engaging men and addressing the role of male. When you talk about how masculinity is defined and calling out harmful attitude in other men, modeling accountability and mentor programs, I thought, wow, that was like how the masculinity is defined. Can you speak a little bit about that chapter there? What would prompt you to concentrate on, the male and how masculinity is involved and calling out harmful attitudes?
Right. Sometimes men feel like man, God gave them the authority, and they come time they'll twist that to think that they have rule over the woman, that when it says to submit, that they have to dominate and control the situation. um, the masculinity in men, if you are grown up into a healthy household where the men were respectful to the women, to respectful to the opposite sex, then that gives you an upper hand. That means that you can help someone else through, because sometimes men just feel entitled because I'm the man and I should be able to do whatever, or see whatever. But in faith communities, male congregants often hold positions of influence. So if you're in a church and you hold a certain position, then you are considered an influential person. Now, if you are involved in some kind of abuse in your relationship, then that sends a message to the men who are watching. At same way, if you in a healthy relationship with your spouse or a significant other, then that also sends a message. So it is important that the male influences in the church that they model a godly behavior, a behavior that God is pleased with, not dominating and not overbearing, showing men how to handle their emotions when they're angry, what things that you can do to control that situation without being violent about it, having an emotional intelligence without being aggressive. You can assert your authority, but you don't have to be overly aggressive in order to get your point across. So males should mentor male. I think it's very important for men in the church that are involved in healthy relationships to mentor other men, um, to give them an idea, to walk through them, especially when they are young men, before they
Mm-hmm.
even get deep into relationships, that they can mentor them what to do when you get angry. What happens when your spouse or your girlfriend or whatever, when she does this or she acts up or she acts out or she's talking down to you or something. What is it that you can do without becoming violent, without putting your hands on her? So those are some of the healthy modeling tips that men should be able to provide to other men, young adults in the church, to teach them when they get older, when they come into those type of situations, because the Bible says train up a child in the way that they should go. And when you give them that foundation, they can always go back to what they learned. It always come back to them somehow. I believe it's always be there when you have been trained in these areas and trained in such things, in relationships especially. And it's always a sense of people don't want to get involved in anybody else's relationship. But if you make it a talking point, if you make it a tool, if you set up a model of literacy in the church for men, in men's discussions, in men's breakfasts, bring it up and put it out there and let people know there's somebody in a men's group that are abusing their wives or girlfriends, and let that be a talking point. Bring that out. Most of the men are the abusers, but women abuse as well. So it goes both ways.
Yes.
Yeah, so you have to be able to let the men know what it is they can do, how to model a godly behavior, to be masculine without trying to be macho, so to speak, and to not be overbearing, to reject the toxic masculinity that is in our culture these days, because especially during the pandemic, the domestic abuse rate went sky high because we were made to
Yes.
stay in the house, and it was made to have to
Oh,
deal with each other and all of that stress. And so the domestic abuse rates just flew off the roof. It's already bad enough when you got
yes.
millions of people being abused every year. I think I read every 8 seconds
Yes.
somebody's being abused. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men will be abused at least once in their lifetime. And those are staggering numbers. There are so many homicides that are related to domestic abuse. Uh, the church doesn't necessarily provide a lot of numbers regards to what they actually, because everybody doesn't report it. So the numbers that are out there are probably
No.
underreported. So the men, if this
Yes.
can be taught early in their lives, if they can show how they don't have to be overbearing, they don't have to try to dominate and control, they don't have to be over aggressive, but you encourage accountability, you encourage a non-abusive behavior, and that you don't condone coercive control, manipulation, or emotional abuse. Because, like I said, abuse goes beyond physical. There is not just a physical, it's not
Yes.
just, and the psychological effects of abuse goes way far longer than the physical abuse. Because when the scars heal, the emotional abuse, the emotional scars, the psychological effect goes on sometimes for years. And it does take quite a bit of fortitude and determination not to let that affect you, because then you live in regret. You have to go through the process of forgiving yourself. And if you have to And then you get to your children. You worry about what they're going to go through. And the men, because my son, I have one son, and even though he saw his father do that, and he was on the verge of that at one time, but thank God that turned around, and so he never got to be an abusive. If anything, he became too passive. So I think it has an
Mm,
effect in both feels to be overly aggressive or become too passive. But the men do play a huge
yeah.
role, but it starts in the home when they're young. Your environmental conditioning is everything to you when you grow up. So what you see, you mimic or you try to combat. Like I believe my ex-husband saw his family, his mother dominate his father when they were growing up. And I believe that is what triggered him to think, well, I'm not going to ever let that happen to me. So he kind of became a player, as you would say, and just kind of used and abused women
But
as
he
he
came
went.
into relationships with
Yes,
trauma,
yes. Mhm.
unrecognized trauma,
Right.
and he turned it in a different way to now that he's gonna, he's not going to allow anyone to take, especially a woman.
Hmm.
That's how some men have it in their mind. I'm not going to allow a woman to take care of me, take advantage of me. I'm not going to allow a woman to control me and to dominate me and to tell me what to do.
Right, exactly. So when instead of doing that, then you reach out, and I can always know when he had that look on his face, and it kept you, and it keeps you kind of at
Mm,
arm's length. You have to maneuver how you want to approach for anything that could be considered volatile, anything that could be considered sensitive, or that could be considered triggering. Because if you ask the wrong question, if you approach the wrong way, I may have gotten my throat choked, or I may have got my hair pulled, or might have gotten pushed around or something. So it's a very delicate situation. So it's really an important thing in your bring upbringing. And when you get to even if you see it at home, if you get to the church, and if there's somebody in the church that is modeling a true masculine behavior, who are being sensitive to situations, who are in control of their emotions and how to let them be displayed in a positive manner, who can do mutual respect and have an emotional well-being about them. It makes a big difference in how that they deal with the relationship that they're going through or will go through. And they can see it in a whole different light in a healthy relationship as opposed to a toxic and devastating one. And not want to control and manipulate people to get their way. And
thank you for
and
those
it happens in all
those
kind.
points.
I'm sorry. I was going to say that, and it happens
Go
in
ahead.
all
No,
kind of.
keep, no, go ahead. It happens.
Yeah, it
Go
happens
on.
into all types of communities. Uh, LGBTQ, they have the same issues. It doesn't matter if it's elderly abuse or even if it's amongst siblings.
Mm,
Abuse is abuse, and it's always a more dominant uh, someone who's trying to dominate the other. They may have an upper hand in economics, or they may have the more money. They may have the better uh, things that they use that against people, and they control people with that, and they manipulate them within those things. So like I say, the LGBTQ community is just as at risk as anybody else. They're not commune, they're people too, they have feelings too. So we don't want to ostracize anybody, because anybody can be abused. It doesn't matter who you are, how much money you make, how high on the pedestal you are, a CEO or a janitor. It doesn't matter. Everybody is prone to be abused. And I think the higher up you go, the more power and control you think you have, the worse the abuse is.
I'm glad that you brought up about the LTGB community because you put that in your book as a section of inclusion, you know, and recognize the effects, like you said, of the different genders, male and females. But I was like, wow, she really put that out there, and I'm glad, like I said, you had a lot of courage to put, you know, say it like it is and put it in the book, and you put there that, you know, domestic violence is it is a phenomenon that, you know, it affects everyone, and you have a call to action for acceptance and inclusion.
Yes, the book repeatedly talks about a trauma informed care, being able to address the issue as it is. Again, there are different levels of abuse, and expanding it to LGBTQ community, men, women of all sexual orientations, and not discriminate against either of them. Being forthcoming and, yeah, like you said, having the courage to create a platform, make the awareness, put the awareness out there, and then train the people in the congregation. What are the signs? What are some of the symptoms? If you sit with somebody in church every day, every Sunday, or 3 times a week for years, you should know something about that person. So when their disposition may
Mm-hmm.
change, when their countenance change, when they become withdrawn or timid, then you should be able to address them and ask, are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help? Without judging, without asking questions, without passing, guilt on anyone, not condemning anyone for their choices. Did they choose to stay? Because you're not trying to do anything to them to make them feel bad. You always want to be a support to them, a help to them. And if they
Yes.
want to leave, then you can help them leave. You can be their confidant. And that's the important thing, being their confidant with somebody that you can trust to help you through your trauma. Because we all need a hand up at one time or another. And being in the church, you think that is where you could find it. But when you don't, it's
Yeah.
devastating, and it leaves you kind of detached from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you used the, and I think you used the right word, that, you know, it's pretty much devastating when you are going into a place that, like you said, it's a place of healing. It's a place of peace and love and connection and belonging, and you don't get, you know, the help that you need, the healing that you need. You don't get the guidance that you need, and you're kind of left out there on your own because the church sees this as a secular problem, and they don't see it as something embedded within the community. You have all kinds of people sitting in your congregation.
Yes,
I
yes,
know
and I
people, like you said, I know people are sitting there, they're suffering from financial struggles, mental struggles, domestic violence, homelessness, everything. But you're
yes,
sitting there and you're feeling ashamed. This is the thing that blows my mind. You're feeling ashamed to speak to someone about it because you're afraid that, like you said, there's going to be more shame put on you because it's always a lack of faith. And the Lord is your shepherd, and there's no lack. And, you know, God is your protection, and read
hmm
and pray. And, you know, you hear all these things over and over, but I am coming to you from one human being to the next human being to
hmm
help me out of
right.
desperation sometimes,
Yes, yes,
and to be
exactly.
devastated and to be turned away. It's
It
it's
is.
it's it's just really, really unbelievable.
Yeah, it is, and it is devastating. And when you hear things being said in general, like you said, people say stuff not even realizing that you all may be included in what they're talking about. Well, I wouldn't do this, and if I was them, and I would do this, dot dot dot, dot. And I don't know what make what's why women are so weak that they can't, and what is wrong with them? They got a problem. So when you hear that kind of stuff,
Oh my
and
goodness.
you may be going through that, that just makes you further decide, no, I can't trust this place to help me out, because you have too many people who already judged you
Wow.
and blaming you and pointing the finger at you and making you feel worse than you already do. So you know right there that this is not the place where I need to get help. I need to get
Wow.
help. somewhere else who can be a little bit more
On the
sensitive
outside.
on the outside. And that's a problem. When you go to church
Yes.
every day, that you're supposed to be, you go to church all the time and you going home still broken and discouraged and feeling hopeless because you know what you're going back home to. So that is devastating
Wow.
to someone, and it's depressing when you're doing it over and over and year after year or month after month or however long, and you got people sitting in the pulpit. I've heard of pastors being abusive to their wives. How are they going to preach against
Yes.
abuse? Because they haven't even determined it, identified in their own lives. So therefore, that congregation, if anybody else is involved in that situation, they'll never hear anybody speak about domestic abuse in that situation because the pastor is a part of the problem. And that may be
Wow.
that may be the case in a lot of situations, whether some people on the ministerial staff or doing the being abused because they misconstrue scriptures. Submission of your wife to you does not mean that you get to dominate and mistreat them. It does not mean God does not condone violence in
Mm.
no way. God hates divorce. Yes, God hates divorce. But he does not want you to sit there and have your head bashed in all the time for every little thing,
Wow.
anything you say and do, and you can't talk on the phone to certain people. You can't go anywhere. They're monitoring your odometer on your phone and on your car and asking you what took you so long to get here, there, and the other place. And well, who are you talking to? Don't talk to them anymore. Let me see who you been calling or texting on your phone and all that kind of monitoring. And that's devastating. That is belittling, and that just beats up a person's whole value system in themselves and makes it even that much harder to get out because domestic abusers they play with your mind and it becomes a stronghold
Oh
in the
yeah.
mind because they manipulate you and they lie to you and they will put you down in front of you, call you all kind of names, and it just chips away at your self-esteem little by little.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It really do. And this is this conversation that we're having here today from one minister to the next that we're having here today. I'm telling you, I was just very, I cannot tell you how much when I saw this book and I saw the title of the book, I just had to get it. I just had to read it because in my mind, I was saying to myself, finally,
Mm-hmm.
wow, finally, someone has said these things and putting it out there. And we're going to end soon because, we're going to come back again, my listeners. We're going to come back again with Minister Ledbetter at another date. And we're going to continue this conversation on domestic violence in the church. And she has other resources on Amazon. On Amazon, Minister Helen Ledbetter has From Survival to Strength. That's another one of the books on Amazon. The one that we're talking about now is Domestic Violence in the Church. The another one she has is Domestic Violence, a Comprehensive Guide. You also have COVID-19, Chaos to Calm. And those are just some of the other books by this wonderful author who decided that she will no longer be silent, being in the ministry, being in the church, being in the body of Christ, that she will be the one to step out and be the voice in the wilderness for the voices that cannot cry out. And she decided that she is going to take up that mantle. And this is a call to justice. Her book is a call to com, um, compassion, justice, and healing. And I just want to just end before we sign off. I just want to read here where it says, faith community holds immense influence. This is the author saying this. Faith community holds immense influence, but the influence must be used responsibly. Victims cannot heal in spaces where silence and harmful language persists. By mobilizing action, training congregants, supporting survivors with tangible resources, and redefining the way domestic violence is discussed, church becomes places where healing is just not hoped for, it is guaranteed. I thought that was the whole book is amazing.
Yeah.
Those words was just very powerful, and it just jumped out at me. Not hopeful, but it is a place when you step into this house of worship, when you step into this place, your safety, your voice, your healing, your peace, everything is guaranteed. I love that.
Yes. Yes.
I
That
love
that kind of
I
that
love
kind
that's
of that kind of sums it all up. Yep. That's where we're supposed to go to
yeah,
get all those things.
we're gonna bring back. Yes, we're going to bring back again at another date. We're going to bring back Minister Helen Ledbetter. We are going to really talk some more about this domestic violence in the church. This has been an amazing, amazing opportunity, amazing conversation that we are going to continue with this subject throughout the year, because I think that this is very, very, very important. And I don't want anyone to think again that we are bashing the church, we're shaming the church. I don't want anyone to think, why are we targeting the church? We are not targeting the church. This is a place within the community. And I
Hmm.
think that we have an obligation to not only serve the people in the congregation, but to come from out those four walls and serve the
Yeah.
people within the community. The people
That's
in the
true.
community look to us. They look to us because they feel that
Hmm.
we have something that they don't have. So I would like to thank Minister Helen Ledbetter for this opportunity to speak with her in depth, and I love her openness and her willingness to go ahead and talk about this. If anyone listening to this and you're sharing this and you find someone in domestic violence, you have suspicion that someone is in domestic violence, you know someone, listen, you can pick up the phone and you can call. It's 1-800-799-7233. This is a nationwide hotline. It is the domestic violence hotline. It's 1-800-799-7233. You can find all of Minister Helen Ledbetter's books about domestic violence on Amazon. Go to her Facebook page. Guess what? Join the conversation. This is Conversations with JR, and this is what I say. We are healing people one conversation at a time. Your voice is valid, your healing is valid, and we would like to hear from you. I thank Helen. Thank you so much for coming and being on here. And this is not going to be the last time that we have you on Conversations with JR.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, then. Thank you. And we'll be back. Thank you for listening for Conversations with JR. And we are off. So let me just go ahead and start doing my business and give me about 20 minutes or so, and then it'll be posted. Thank you. This was fun. We're going to do this again.